Okay, last night, Thursday, April 11th, we decided to focus on writing about yourself. Um, to start off with, I actually shared a passage from Annie Dillard, who's an American writer, just because I thought she's such a powerful writer. She writes so descriptively, and I thought it was humorous that she painted such a big picture in order to start to tell a story about a moth. And that was her experience that she wrote about that she thought caused her some growth. So just included this for you to see some powerful writing. We tried to provide you guys with some ideas to get you started on writing a personal narrative. And I know we had all mentioned in the past, or we had discussed in the past, that a lot of times we hear a song and it brings back memories and we think about a particular experience. I know a lot of you also have teenage sons and daughters, and so we thought it might be a good idea for you to think about where they are in their lives and where you were at that point in time, or else to look at where they are in their lives and think, I hope they do this, or I don't hope they do this. And so that might be a good way to generate some ideas as well. And then, of course, just the old adage, I've changed. How have I changed? What is it that has changed me?
I know if I went back in my room, there'd be things I want to throw away. Jeez.
And then just generic approaches. I know some of you kept journals, and so you've used those to produce your ideas. If you have old albums with pictures, that might be a good way to generate ideas. And then something that's, I think, a little bit of a risk to take is just questioning other people who knew you during that time, your parents, your friends, other family members. It might give you a new perspective on an event that maybe was powerful in your growth as an individual.
And if you have old pictures or certificates or anything like that, or even T-shirts, we've got scanners here you can use if you don't have them digitized. Also, during the day, if you had some time, say you wanted to put a couple hours away on scanning, you're more than welcome to come in during school hours also, before and after school, to do the scanning.
Yeah, just check it in the main office and tell them you're here to see Ken in the library, and they'll get you set up. Okay, these are the things that we've covered over the past 3 weeks, but I thought it was important to emphasize the fact that they're still important even as we change what we're writing about, even as we change topics. So you still need to consider creating or establishing a purpose. What's the big picture that you want your reader to get? You still need to think about your audience. Who is it that you envision reading this? Some of you have discussed wanting to get your work published. So what kind of audience would that look like? Or some of you are writing for your children. So what might the piece look like for them? We've talked a lot about tone, your attitude, the overarching feeling that you want to leave your readers with. Organization. A lot of you have been doing chronological order, which is nice and easy because you're writing about an event. So you want to go in order in which the events occur. And then tonight last night, we delved a little bit more into sensory detail and how to use figurative language to appeal to the senses. So we'll get to that here in a minute. Voice is the first kind of new thing that we talked about last night. And I think of all the writing I've seen from you gentlemen, I think that you have done a nice job of being yourself. And I would just encourage you to keep your voice consistent as you're writing one piece, and even through all of your pieces. Just to be self-aware of your voice. It might change from piece to piece, and as long as you have control of that, I think that's what's really important. These are the 4 gentlemen who have shared pieces with me, and so we talked a lot about the voice they created. I was curious to see if they felt like that was an accurate reflection of who they are. Even made up a word, peonic. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me a piece and ask about voice and tell me whether or not that's what you're trying to achieve, and we can get you to where you want to be. A problem that a lot of my students have, although I don't see any of you having it yet, is just making sure when you're creating voice that you don't overdo it. I think you gentlemen are in a position where you have to use a lot of lingo, a lot of jargon, and I think that's okay, as long as you're not you just don't want to alienate your audience.
It was a dark and stormy night.
So, trying to develop your sensory detail a little bit further, I noticed that a couple of you have started using figures of speech. And so I wanted to go over these 4 different types of figures of speech and encourage you guys to try using them in your writing. A simile is a comparison that uses like or as, and one of our writers used the comparison of a drill sergeant's body aching like a mad dog. He even went on to explain, or describe rather, how they barked, which I thought was a great extended comparison. A metaphor is a direct comparison. He is this, she is this. There's no like or as in it. And again, I stole from somebody else's writing. He wasn't the brightest bulb. That's kind of a saying that we're all familiar with. We've heard that before, not the brightest bulb in the bunch. So similes and metaphors are comparisons of dissimilar things. Personification is when you take something that's not human and give it human traits. So again, this example came from someone's writing. It was, again, describing a drill sergeant about how they were restrained, and the soldiers feared what would happen when the chains were released. The chains referring to the restraint. So taking something inanimate like chains and giving it a human characteristic. And then, of course, exaggeration. We talked especially last night about trying to paint a picture for readers, especially if you're writing for young people who haven't served, about trying to paint a picture of what it's like to wait, hurry up and wait. One of the hyperboles that I saw used in somebody's piece had to do with soldiers having, it was something about a relationship or feeling, but that they've had it for eternity. And that obviously would be an exaggeration. So great examples of figures of speech.
Now, I had one question. I've seen this before. On metaphor on this slide, he is in brackets. What does that mean?
That's a great question. The writer used the person's name, the actual person he was writing about, and I wanted to eliminate it to provide the writer anonymity. And so since I took that name out and replaced it with a pronoun, the brackets are telling the reader, hey, the writer has changed something, and this is what's been changed. So I just removed the name, added a pronoun, and because I added it, I had to put it in brackets.
So if they were using a quote from somebody in their writing, they could do that and take that person's name out.
Absolutely. Or if you're quoting somebody that's using a lot of pronouns and you feel it's necessary to clarify what the pronoun is referring to, maybe somebody keeps talking about it and you need to clarify what it means, you can simply put it in brackets.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yep. We did review dialogue. Last week we talked about how to punctuate within quotation marks, but the other thing I wanted to remind you, since I suspect if you haven't included dialogue in your writing, you're probably going to at some point, don't forget that every time your speaker changes, you have to start a new paragraph. So you have to indent a new line. If I was documenting a conversation between Ken and I, even if we were just speaking in 1 to 2 words at a time, hey, what's up, not much. Every time the speaker changes, you have to start a new paragraph. So it doesn't matter how long the statements are. So that was something I wanted to point out last night. Skipping through the examples, that's what we covered last week. The other thing we talked about grammatically was capitalization, and I said this is something that you all are going to have to help me with because I'm not good with military jargon, and so I don't know what is proper and what is common. Proper nouns are specific. They're names. For example, I teach communication arts. That's the specific name of the class that I teach. Therefore, it's capitalized. A common noun is generic. It's not specific. So if I talked about teaching a science class, science would not be capitalized. If it was the name of the class that I actually taught, then I would capitalize it.
Like biology or anatomy?
So if I teach biology, or if I teach anatomy 1, and I say that, then I'm going to capitalize it. So you're going to have to determine, and certainly you can ask for help, consult with us, but you're going to have to determine what's specific to your topic, what's proper and what's not proper. And you'll have to help me through that, and that'll help determine what's capitalized and what's not. And that is it for this week. So your assignment is already posted online. There are about 5 different prompts from which to choose, and you're focused on writing about yourself.
Cool, and we'll see y'all next week.